بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألف لام تلك آيات الكتاب المبين إنا أنزلناه قرآنا عربيا لعلكم تعقلون نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن وإن كنت من قبله لمن الغافلين إذ قال يوسف لأبيه يا أبت إني رأيت 11 كوكبا والشمس والقمر رأيتهم لي ساجدين قال يا بني لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا إن الشيطان للإنسان عدو وكذلك يبتليك ربك ويعلمك من تأويل الأحاديث ويتم نعمته عليك وعلى آل يعقوب كما أتمها على أبويك من قبل إبراهيم وإسحاق إن ربك عليم حكيم لقد كان في يوسف وإخوته آيات للسائلين
صدق الله العظيم. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن اتبعهم إلى يوم الدين. I'm sure all of you have read Surah Yusuf and probably read so much all of the interpretation on it and the tafsir of it. And as you know, Justice Shazado has actually been given several sessions on it, but he is going in a far more detail than what I'm planning to do. What I'm planning to do actually is just to learn something from Surah Yusuf as related to how the Quran has this unique teaching ability to basically enhance our cognitive intellectual capacity. How can we sometimes we miss it by not concentrating on how you think about it. How are you going to learn, particularly when you have a youth, a child, you're reading with him the surah, how are you going to take the surah and help the child really help develop his brain? That's what I'm trying to focus on, because frankly, I really feel that we are missing a major advantage of the Quran and major educational tool of the Quran by the way we study it and even focus in memorization of it without understanding what are we reading, and focus only that we are going to get a blessing from it. Yes, you are going to get a blessing from it, but you should have a blessing in the hereafter. You should have a blessing in this life too by having the most intelligent brain. So what I'm going to focus on, these seven items. One of them is I'm going to talk about the uniqueness of the story of Prophet Yusuf in the Quran, and probably the uniqueness of Prophet Yusuf also, and the nature of the stories in the Quran, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stories and how can you take advantage of them, and then talk about the elements of good story, how you write a good story, how you help your son or your daughter or grandson or granddaughter to write a good story. Then focus about the difference between dream and vision, then highlight 3 scenes in the Quran and then in the surah, and then try to basically connect them together to see how we're going to come with a connection. That's part of the training, how you develop a scenario. And then we look to a couple of terms that will just define and then I highlight some differences between the account in the Old Testament and the Quran. You notice something, while all of the many prophets that mentioned the Quran, their name and their account and their stories have spread out through the Quran. The only one whose story have been given in just one surah is actually Prophet Yusuf. And then you find out that Prophet Yusuf's name came twice, just a name, no details about his ex story or anything, came twice in the Quran, one for Surah Al-An'am and one for Surah Ghafir. But the whole account of his life, his story, what he have faced, all in one surah, unlike any other prophet that Allah subhanahu mentioned in the Quran. You find out in Surah Al-An'am, Allah subhanahu talk about, the blessing that he provided to Prophet Ibrahim, and then list 14 prophets, a list of 14 prophets that came from Sayyidina Ibrahim, descendants of Sayyidina Ibrahim. And one of them is Prophet Yusuf. And that's why you look at the whole, the verses, وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ كُلٌّ هَدَيْنَا وَنُوحًا هَدَيْنَا مِنْ قَبْلُ. Nuh is not part of Sayyidina, is not the descendants, obviously, of Sayyidina Ibrahim. وَمِنْ ذُرِّيَّتِ دَاوُودَ وَسُلَيْمَانَ وَأَيُّوبَ وَيُوسُف. And then the verse continue, وَمُوسَى وَهَارُونَ وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي وَزَكَرِيَّا وَيَحْيَى وَعِيسَى وَإِلْيَاسَ وَإِسْمَاعِيلَ وَالْيَسَعَ وَيُونَسَ وَلُوطًا and so on. So this is one time, and actually that was the first time that the name of Yusuf, Prophet Yusuf, came in. The second time the name came when in Surah Ghafir, and that is when a righteous man from the house of Pharaoh, which رجل من آل فرعون, is giving advice to the Pharaoh and his people. And he was telling them, وَلَقَدْ جَاءَكُمْ يُوسُفُ مِنْ قَبْلِ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ فَمَا زِلْتُمْ فِي شَكٍّ مِمَّا جَاءَكُمْ بِهِ حَتَّى إِذَا هَلَكَ قُلْتُمْ لَنْ يَبْعَثَ اللَّهُ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ رَسُولًا. So basically he was telling them, and Yusuf has already come to you with a clear signs, yet you remained in doubt concerning his. Until he died, you said Allah will not send any messenger after him. And then Allah, says, كَذَلِكَ يُضِلُّ اللَّهُ مَنْ هُوَ مُسْرِفٌ مُرْتَابٌ. And that is how Allah lets astray, anyone who crosses the limits and lives in doubt. So in this verse, it tells us something. Tell us that Yusuf came as a messenger to Egypt. And he actually does not mention that he said not min ba'di rasulan or nabiyan. He said rasulan. That Sayyidina Yusuf is a messenger in this regard. He didn't go to Egypt to serve, and we know the difference between a prophet and a messenger. So that is the one that gives us a reference to this one. These are the only two, basically surahs that when the name of Prophet Yusuf came. Now, so I said, other than these two verses, the whole detail of the story of Prophet Yusuf comes in the Quran. And Allah subhanahu described the whole surah, which tell the story, he said, is of the best stories. It's from Ahsan al-Qasas. So this is one of the best stories that you will ever read. Therefore, you actually can take advantage of the surah as you read it. Particularly, as I said, when you study it with the youth, that to serve actually as a learning and developing tool to improve his talent, how to become a good writer. And then you will also note that the surah, does not provide so much details. The surah is almost like provide key scenes and then leave between the scenes. So you find there is a specific scene and then jump to another scene, and expecting what the leader should do, the reader should write the script between the two scenes to connect them together. And that is a talent of being, how to be trained to have an imagination. And it's not that critical that you come with the exact, connection, because the important part that each time you read the story, or read the surah, you might come actually with a different script to connect the two scenes. And that is part of increasing your cognitive capacity of the person in front of you, whom you are teaching this story. Obviously, the stories in the Quran are also intended, actually require serious thinking, because frankly, when Allah subhanahu gave us a command of what should we do with the Quran, He didn't say that you should memorize the Quran. He didn't say you should read the Quran. He said, you should do tadabbur of the Quran. And obviously you are going to read before you do the tadabbur. But the focus of Allah subhanahu to it is tadabbur. And I have, give several talks in it, and I said studying the Quran requires 7 steps, and the tadabbur is a key step from it, in it. So, and this is why Allah subhanahu, when you do it, that's why you have to think. A tadabbur requires thinking. And Allah subhanahu tells us in Surah Al-A'raf, فَقْصُصُ الْقَصَصَ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ, and relate the stories, perhaps they can think, they can ponder, they can reflect. It is not just to go through it without, this analysis that you do to derive the key lessons from it, And that's why this surah, you can spend a lot of time to say, what was the lessons that I should learn? What's the moral lesson, that I can learn from it? Since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that this is one of the best stories, or min ahsas al-qasas, we should be able to, and as you teach your son, as you read it, you say, okay, if Allah said this is the best story, what is the key element of the best story that we can derive from reading that surah? And so I put here, 10 of them, but I'm sure as your son and your daughter will be much clever than I am, and they can come even with different, element too. And for example, we know that any good story, according as you see from the surah, that one we should have a main character who is a hero in the story. And who is the main character in this? Was Sayyidina Yusuf. Also, you need a powerful enemies, to start creating a conflict. And who are they? They are the brothers, his older brother and the wife of the Aziz. Then you need an event, something to start the story in motion. What's the event here? Is basically the vision, the dream that Sayyidina Yusuf had. It started everything, going continuously in this case. Then you need also, almost a specific conflict that happened in the heart of the people, and then it transforms into a vision, in something that they do, practical things that they do. So you find it out always, it comes always from the brothers. They have some bad feeling in their heart, and then somebody suddenly, they transform it into an evil act. The wife of the Aziz did the same thing. Also, you need, when you write this, when you notice the story with people in it, speaking in the first or the third, person. It's almost direct. You're saying, as if you're seeing them in front of you speaking to each other. And this is part of the scene. You also notice something, there is a hook. There is that shirt. You see the shirt here go to this father, the shirt here go with the wife of Aziz, the shirt here go back to the father. So suddenly each time you forget something, you see the shirt is coming in front of you again. Then also have the main character have to have a lot of transformation in his life as it goes through the story. And you notice that in this case, Sayyidina Yusuf was the main character, was a child, became a slave, became a prisoner, and then became a master, after this. So you saw there is a changes on it. You have to write it in a way that the reader can basically draw a picture of it, can have visual scene, describe exactly what happened. And you can see it. You can see it when Allah describes how they put him in the well, how the wife of the Aziz was doing it, with him, how he brought the friends, how the king came, how, you see almost, if you are artist, you can basically write for each scene, a picture of it. And then the end of the day, any story should have a climax ending. And in this case, you know what the climax ending did. He became now the head, his parent came, his, brothers came, and all basically sat, under his feet. So if you study this with your son or with your daughter, then in that case you can say, okay, we know this element. Can you write something? Write a story that take these elements. Think about it, and let them write something. So now, as I said, the surah started with a vision. And this is the Prophet Yusuf, who was very, still young boy, he saw while he has saw, a dream when he was a child. And here is something which is related, because probably when we translated Arabic to English, sometimes we always use the same English term, but there is a subtle differences. So you find in the Quran differentiate between what we call hilm, and the hilm you can translate it as a dream, and between ru'ya. And ru'ya you can translate it as a vision. But sometimes they said it's a dream. If you look in the dictionary and see what's the difference between vision and dream, they said the dream is while you're sleeping and the vision is while you are awake. But actually in the Quran, no, both the dream and the vision happen when you are sleeping. So what is the key issue? That in the dream, and here's the one, you find the term hilm, which is a dream, came in the Quran 3 times. And always related to some confused scenes that the person sees while sleeping. What do you call it? Adghas wa ahlam. It's, you see something, but it's all mixed up and it's all strange and something. But when you see a vision, a ru'ya, the ru'ya, it comes as very clear. And actually the ru'ya came in the Quran 7 times. The name ru'ya, the word ru'ya came in the Quran 7 times. And also comes with clear that you basically can, and you don't forget it. And it can be easily interpreted. And then the person might see it more than once. It's repetitive. So it is, so that is, you find this subtlety of the ru'ya in it. And then we know from the teaching that the dream, which is at all confused and, and then, basically confused the different subject and so on, comes from 2 things. It comes either from a whisper of Satan, or comes because of something during your day or whatever, a week, you have been thinking about something, and then when you dream, it comes to when you sleep, you see the same things, the people that you made something happen. But the ru'ya is different. The ru'ya comes from, it is a whisper from the angel by information, unseen information from Allah about something will happen in the future. And that is why the ru'ya will always materialize. Whatever is materialized after a week or after, 20 years, it is always will happen. So a ru'ya is some form of a revelation. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ said في hadith عن Abu Hurairah, and reported in the Bukhari, a good vision, a good ru'ya salihah, a good ru'ya is part of 46 parts of prophethood. So he said basically the ru'ya is part of prophethood. Now you might, actually the hadith came in different things, but the one the most logical to me is that this 1 in 46. And you think, why you think it's logical to you? It's 1 in 46, because the Prophet ﷺ was a prophet for 23 years. But they said before he started receiving the revelation, the Quran and so on, he used to see visions, ru'yas, and the next day it will materialize in front of him. He sees something in his dream, and suddenly the next day or next day after, it exactly happened. And they said that's what they said. So that was half a year, 6 months before this. So if you take half a year, divide by 23, it gives you 1 in 46. So that at least makes sense. That hadith is more accurate than all of the other narration. And this is, I said, reported in the Bukhari. The Prophet ﷺ also said that, that the chain of messenger and the prophet that has come to an end. Oh, after him, there is no messenger. There shall be no messenger or prophet after me, but there will be missionaries. So the companions said, what are these missionaries? And the Prophet ﷺ is the vision of a Muslim is part of prophethood. So at this point, is the only thing that will happen is by really these visions. So it's an interesting also, ru'yas does not only, don't think that only come to believer. If you look to any culture, past or present, you find out the always report of people have seen a ru'ya or a vision that materialized. And that is, and this is because this revelation is not limited to just us as Muslim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the revelation to a lot of people also. And actually the ru'ya explain, the widespread of these ru'yas, of these visions, across all culture, across all people, all nations, it actually addressed quickly to in your mind all of this confusion about al-qada wal-qadr, the decree and the predestination. Because what happened, we always say, oh, Allah, because how are we going to know? Allah knows something in advance before we do it. If He knew it, then we have to do it. And the reality of it, no. Knowing something in advance and Allah forcing the thing to happen is completely two different things. And Allah saying, no, you have the freedom to do whatever it is, but I know in advance what are you going to do. And this comes in an example for us is basically in our ru'ya. You see a ru'ya, a vision, and then after a week it materializes. Do you have an influence on it? Were you the one who forced it to happen? And the answer is no. So the second part, when it's the whole concept of ru'ya, it actually Muslim believers believe that the ru'ya come from Allah, as I said, the Prophet ﷺ said. But if you ask an atheist, okay, you don't believe there is God, there is Allah, then tell me what is this, how you explain the ru'ya, how you explain the vision that people see. We believe it comes from Allah, a revelation from Allah to us, to certain people. And they will tell you, oh, it's by chance. You just have a dream and then it happened. But if it's by a chance, how in the world it can be by chance for all culture, for all people, from all different sort of life, from the young, the old, the Muslim, non-Muslim, Chinese, American, and so on. So it cannot be just a random chance that's happening all the time to all people. And that directly just refute any argument about the whole concept of chance. And in Surah Yusuf, it includes, as I said, several scenes. It includes actually 4 visions. And these visions are seen by different classes of people. It's seen by a child, it is seen by a king, and the visions seen by 2 prisoners. So all of them come from different background and different conditions and so on. But these visions actually are threaded together to lead to the fulfillment of the first vision. So when we see in the first scene is that Sayyidina Yusuf came to his father and he said, yeah. Here's the verses that came in early enough. What was the vision of Yusuf? Yusuf came and said, إِذْ قَالَ يُوسُفُ لِأَبِيهِ يَا أَبَتِ إِنِّي رَأَيْتُ أَحَدَ عَشْرَ كَوْكَبًا وَالشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ رَأَيْتُهُمْ لِي سَاجِدِينَ. When Yusuf came to his father and said, oh, my father, indeed, I saw 11 stars and the sun and the moon. I saw them all prostrating to me. But look at this scene now. Then the father told him, قال يا بني لا تقصص رؤياك على إخوتك فيكيدوا لك كيدا إن الشيطان للإنسان عدو مبين وكذلك يجتبيك ربك ويعلمك من تأويل الأحاديث ويتم نعمته عليك وعلى آل يعقوب كما أتمها على أبويك من قبل إبراهيم وإسحاق إن ربك عليم حكيم. So the father gave him, he told him, he said, okay, my dear son, my son, don't tell the vision to your brothers. Lest they make a plot against you. Surely Satan is for man an open enemy. That means why they will make a plot? Because Satan is going to inspire them to do it. So don't tell them. So don't give Satan a chance. And then he continued and said, it will be in this way that your Lord will teach you the interpretation of events, and will perfect his grace upon you and upon the family of Yaqub, as he perfected it earlier upon your forefather Ibrahim and Ishaq. Surely your Lord is all knowing, all wise. So here is the first scene, which is the vision and the father. Now, as I said, we noted, as repeated again, the Quran provides scenes and leaves between the scene for you as a reader to connect between them. So after this scene, there will come another scene. And then we have to have a connection between them. And how are we going to develop the connection? We have to think now about the scenarios. Now, we know that who is Sayyidina Yaqub? Sayyidina Yaqub, his father he is a prophet. His father Ishaq is a prophet. His basically grandfather Ibrahim is a prophet. So he knew that in his lineage, it is going to become a prophet. Now he has 12 children. Who of them will be selected as a prophet? He doesn't know. So it is most likely, and this is now what you have to imagine, think of that scenario. Because he knew this, he told them that any one of you who see a vision or a dream, you come and tell me about it. And that is why Yusuf, as soon as he saw the dream, he directly ran to his father to tell him. And immediately the father interpreted the dream. What he did, he know now that Yusuf is the one from among all his children that will become a prophet. And therefore, and also he knew that Yusuf is not only going to be a prophet, but is going to be a messenger. Why? Because the dream says that, Sayyidina Yaqub and all of the family will prostrate to him. If Sayyidina Yaqub is a prophet, how can he cannot prostrate to another prophet, in the form of a dream? No, it has to be higher than him. And the higher than the prophet is a messenger. So he knew that Yusuf is a messenger in this regard. He also know that when Yusuf become a messenger and we all will gather, we all will be together. What it means? It means that nothing will happen to Yusuf or the other brothers until Yusuf become a messenger. They will live. So, and then also you come and say, when he knew this, and as a father now, what do you expect his, how he's going to behave now with Yusuf? If you can read the story, you can see that it seems like Sayyidina Yaqub was married more than one wife. Yusuf and his brother was from one wife, and maybe the other 10 children with either from one wife or from multiple wives. Nobody knows. And also know that Sayyidina Yaqub and all the family and all the people live are Bedouins. And Bedouins who are basically live in tent or have different, small quarter, that they live in. So what happened when when I'm now thinking about, and you can think that how the father will react now. He doesn't want to tell his other sons that watch for Yusuf. He has important, he's going to have an important role and so on, because he's afraid from Satan, start plotting for them. He said, let's kill him so one of us become the one, So in that case, he most likely, he was spending more time in the tent or the place when the mother of Yusuf was there. Just as a human nature, because now of that uniqueness that he identified about him. And the brothers interpreted this, that he loved Yusuf and his brother more than he loves them. And that's why it comes in the second scene now is going to what happened. That's why they plotted now, and they came, our father is basically, he is not just, and now he loves them than more love us, because when they have seen this, and they said he and his brother, so it wasn't Yusuf only, it was the two. That means whatever the father was doing when the two was there, and the only way it happened is when they were with their mother, and spend more time with her than probably the others. Now there's another part in this one. He knew now that Yusuf and his brother would live. So why was this important? Because remember, as soon as the brother came to him and told him that the wolf ate him, what did he say? He said, "Bal sawwalat lakum anfusukum amran." No, rather your inner desire have tempted you to do something. He did not die, because I know he is not going to die until he fulfilled the mission and become a messenger. So therefore he didn't believe in what they told him. And then even later, years after, when they went to Egypt and then he took, the other brother, there, Then what he told them, he said, يا بني اذهبوا فتحسسوا من يوسف. All of these years, he knew that Yusuf is not dead. And said, oh, my sons, go and acquire about Yusuf and his brother. I know they are okay. And Yusuf is okay. And what ولا تيأسوا من روح الله إنه لا يأس من روح الله إلى القوم الكافرين. And don't be despair from the mercy of Allah, because nobody despairs from the mercy of Allah except those believers. And then now it comes another question. Okay, he knows that he is alive. So why he was so sad and almost crying until the verse tells us that his eye almost became blind? I mean, he's going to be alive. He's going to be okay. Why? And Allah subhanahu tells us, وَتَوَلَّ عَنْهُمْ وَقَالَ يَا أَسَفِي عَلَى يُوسُف وَبِيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ, and turned away from them and said, alas, my grief for Yusuf. And this is far later. And has lost his sight because of the sorrow that he was suppressing. So now, why? And frankly, this is now an emotional thing. If you think about it, if parent, have their child died, then if a child died, then they obviously will have a major distress and a major pain and so on. But it is temporary. It might go for a year, for 2 years. But imagine if a parent knows his child is lost, and he knew that he's still alive, but he doesn't know where is he, what is happening to him, how he lives. That pain will not diminish. It will continuously going on, because he always keeps thinking about this child. And it will actually, I said, be overwhelming to him. And anybody, if you talk, may Allah protect us from having any, child that will get lost. But if you talk to any parent who their child lost for years, you find out that pain and this suffering, it's just overwhelming for them all the time. And that is what the story actually tells us about how Sayyidina, Yaqub was feeling, because he knew he's alive, but he doesn't know what's happening to him. It is that unknown. The problem with the unknown is much worse than when something has happened already in front of you. As I said now also, in just, when the brother said that, why they said that their father is preferred Yusuf and his brother over us, I said that could have been because, he was spending more time with the wife, and therefore when the 2 children were there. Now we can move to another scene of the story. And this is scenes, I'm going to focus on the scene when the wife of the Aziz, who tried to seduce Yusuf, and he refused, and the story, when this happened, the story started splitting among the elite women. And this is why Allah subhanahu talk about not nisa, it's all about niswa. Niswa, few women, but a connected women. So they start talking about her. So what is she going to do? She wants to suppress the story from spreading. So she invited them. So Allah subhanahu tell us, the episode now present to us what the women is talking about with each other, a scene of the women talking about, and the scene, how the blood of the wife of the wife of the Al-Aziz, how she's going to do with them. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَقَالَ نِسْوَةٌ مِّنَ الْمَدِينَةِ امْرَأَةُ الْعَزِيزِ تُرَاوِدُ فَتَاهَا عَنْ نَفْسِهِ قَدْ شَغَفَهَا حُبًّا إِنَّ لَنَرَاهَا فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. And the few women from the city, these elite women, said, oh, the wife of the Aziz is seeking to seduce her useful slave. His love has overwhelmed her. Surely we see her in great error and plain error. Now, obviously, our wife Al-Aziz figured out that, or heard that these women are gossiping about her. So now she wants to use his influence. She was the minister's wife. She can invite them, and nobody will refuse. So she invited them, but we plotted a scheme. And the objective of that scheme is to change them from accusers to being accused. And therefore, they shouldn't talk about her. And the whole story can stop being spread, to other women. So what she did, She said, فَلَمَّا سَمِعَتْ بِمَكْرِهِنَّ, when she heard of this, slay talk, that they are saying, أرسلت إليهن وأعتدت لهن متكئا وآتت كل واحدة منهما سكينا وقالت اخرج عليهن فلما رأينه أكبرنه وقطعنا أيديهن وقلنا حاشا لله ما هذا بشرا إن هذا إلا ملك كريم. And when she heard of their slay talk, now she decided to do something tricky now. She sent to them and prepared for each of them a cushion and they gave everyone a knife. And then said to Yusuf, come out to them. And when they saw him, they exalted him and then they start, cutting their hand, exclaiming, Allah blameless, he is no human being. This is but a noble angel. So, okay, now, if you look to any books of tafsir, there is always interpretation of these things. And I'm sure Justice Shazado also, when he is giving his own interpretation. So I'm not going to discuss which one is right, which one is wrong, because frankly, all of them is speculating, So, but I want to focus in few words in it, and I try to give, and this is something you said, and you yourself can say, okay, let me write the script for this. Let me understand what she was doing and why she did it. Because actually that scene is linked to another scene that basically proves that Yusuf was innocent. And Yusuf is aware of what is happening here. So let us think about it. First of all, there is a word here, قطعنا. قطعنا is coming from قطع, to cut. If you translate, it's cut. But when you use this shadda over the word, the letter ta, it repeats. قطعنا. It said the ta has been repeated now. It means that it is not casual. No, it's an intentional cut and repeated cut. قطع something means he did it intentionally and did it several times. So that is focus that tell you that this wasn't an accidental issue or something. No, they did it. They did it intentionally. They cut their hand intentionally and did it several times. So now, well, let us explain it. How are we going to explain it? What was the plot of the Aziz and why they did it? Now, that they have to do this. And I said the objective, is not for you when you're studying with your son and trying to come, it's not to come because you don't know the ultimate answer anyway, but you're trying to fit why this important scene, because you want to speculate on it, because it connects to the second one, the other scene, when the Sayyidina Yusuf interpreted I think the screen mirroring might not have gone. When Sayyidina Yusuf interpreted the dream to the wives, interpreted the dream to the person who was with him in the prison, and he told the king. To the king, he said, "Okay, bring him to me." So, وَقَالَ الْمَلِكِ ائْتُونِي بِهِ. So after the interpretation of the dream. فلما جاءه الرسول قال ارجع إلى ربك فاسأله ما بال النسوة التي قطعن أيديهن إن ربي بكيدهن عليم. قال, okay, here is the verse 10. The servant or the slave came to the Yusuf, asked him, okay, after the king gave the order, bring him to me. He said, no, I'm not going to go. Let the king investigate the women who cut their hand first, before I go. And then the story comes, the king brought the women now. And then we brought, he said, قال ما خطبكن إذ راوتن يوسف عن نفسه قلنا حاشا لله ما علمنا عليه من سوء قالت امرأة العزيز الآن حصحص الحق أنا راودته عن نفسه وإنه لمن الصادقين. So we know now, he said, hey, tell him what, told the slave, go to the, is it? Oh, sorry. Let me see. I should do this again. Okay. Okay, it came back. Okay. Yeah. So now, so when he come and said, you all read this part here, So he asked the women what happened. He told him, he said, go ask the women who cut their hand, you know. And then they came back, and when he asked them, they said, oh, Yusuf didn't do anything. Okay. So now what happened? Notice something. The Sayyidina Yusuf did not ask the Aziz, so they asked the king to question the wife of the Aziz. He asked him to question the wife, the women. Why the women? Because there is no proof against the wife of the Aziz. But against the women, there is a proof. There is a physical proof about their cutting your hand. You will ask them, what's your hand? Show me your hand. What are you cutting your hand for? So there is a proof. And this is why, how did Yusuf know? He knows it because he have seen it. It's happening to him. And that is when you have to come with the scenario then. And this is links now, what is the wife of the Aziz did with what is now, how Yusuf took advantage of what he did to basically prove his own innocence here. Now, here is, you really have to come with two things. You use your imagination, because you have to connect, as I said, you have the scene, you have to connect between them and link them together. And also look at part of the history, and see if the culture and the history at that time. One scenario is that when the wife of the Aziz heard about they telling her about this one, she said, okay, you come and visit me. And she said, if you did not want, if you want any one of you who see him and wants to take him for a while to seduce him, she better cut her hand as a precondition for it. So he said, okay, I'll show him to you. Here is a knife. Here is a cushion. You can put your hand on it when you try to do it. Any one of you who wants, when he see him, wants him to be tempted by him and wants to take him with her, I'll give him to you for a while. So as soon as all of the women saw him, they said, yeah, we do want him. All wants to seduce him. So all agreed to cut their hands, make cuts in their hand. And she doesn't want their blood to spread on the carpet and whatever. She said, no, put your hand on the cushion. So I can keep this cushion as a proof that you guys have done this too. I'm not the only guilty one, you all guilty with me. You want him as much as I want him too. So that is one you can say, okay, that could be the scenario. And that's why she trapped them into it. And Yusuf know it. And therefore he said, ask them about why they cut their hand. Because now they took him. She gave it to him, promise. But he refused all of them. Any one of them took him for a couple of days and he still refused all of them. That's why they all plotted against him to put him in jail then. And that's why he did the dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, Allah, you better change, get them away from me because otherwise I cannot stand it anymore. So that's when you get the linkage to it together. Now you come and say, well, what is cutting the hand? Could she do something else? Now that's where you look to the culture. And actually, if you look, remember that Egypt at that time was not ruled by the Egyptian. It ruled by the Hyksos. And the Hyksos came from the area of Syria, Jordan, Palestine, the Palestinian. And they didn't occupy the whole Egypt. They occupied only the northern part of Egypt, and Yusuf was there. So the South Egypt was still ruled by the pharaohs. And that's, so anyway, the custom in Syria until now, if you challenge somebody, you tell him, and I'm going to read it, I'm going to read it in Arabic because they say this, and somebody from, Jordan here or Syria can probably know this. صدقني إذا طلع كلامك صحيح لأقطع أيدي. لأقطع أيدي. يعني, if you come and say, okay, what you telling, I'm claiming something. And then you say, no, you are not telling the truth. You said, okay, if my claim is not correct, I'll cut my hand. And if what you're saying is not correct, you cut your hand. Now, where is that phrase comes from? It must have an all the time practice that they used to do. Obviously now they do not physically cut their hand, but it is a statement that, I don't hear it from Egypt. I don't hear it from, other places. You hear it from the Syrian and the Palestinian and the Jordanians. So there must have been practice in the past that if you want to prove something, that's what you have to prove. Not that you cut it, completely on it. But before I move to this word, because the word cut sometimes get confused in the mind, in the way it is. First of all, cut means, the word cut by definition means make a separation, okay? But it does not mean a complete sever of the part you want to be cut from the other one. If you use a knife cutting something and the knife is slit and cut the skin, it separated the skin and the blood will come, but your hand is not cut. But you said, I cut my hand. It's a term that we all use. Just making it, yes, you did a separation for it, but that doesn't mean sever your hand. And then if you said, okay, but can you prove it from the Quran? Yes. In the Quran, the word qata'a came 30 times. Only one time came to imply cutting the hand, severing the hand. And this came in the penal system, in the punishment system for the thief. Now, first of all, did the people who make the law interpret it because of the word cut? No. The people interpreted because the way the Prophet ﷺ applied the law. That's how they did it. And there is so many commands, laws in the Quran come with word. You cannot interpret it using the dictionary. No, you have to interpret it, the application of it using the Prophet practice. What did the Prophet ﷺ do? How he applied this punishment system. So in one time came cut to be severed the hand, and said it came only to this one case. So now there comes to another scene here that sometimes, an issue that comes a little bit confusing. The king of this happened now after they proven, and frankly came the wife. They said, and this is what the king did. He asked the women, and then the women admitted, because there has the proof in it, and Yusuf knew about it. He told the king about it, and the wife of the Aziz has no choice now, because now they will testify against her. Therefore, she has to admit too, and that's how she admitted herself and said, yeah, he is innocent too. But she didn't volunteer it in the beginning. And the king didn't ask her. So after this, the king, when he realized how much injustice happened to Yusuf, he said, bring him to me. This is the most innocent person, I have. And he said, وَقَالَ الْمَلِكُ ائْتُونِي بِهِ أَسْتَخْلِصُ لِنَفْسِي. And now come, and I am going to take him, use him for myself. I'm going to make him my right hand. I'm going to make him my prime minister, فسيدنا يوسف قال اجعلني على خزائن الأرض إني حافظ عليم. No, just to give me the position of being a minister of treasury, in it. And this actually came interesting because you read, scholars come and use this verse and argue that they said, because the hadith, there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, he says, and this is, it's reported actually in Bukhari and Muslim. And concentrate on this hadith a little bit. And this is by Abdurrahman ibn Sumra. Abdurrahman ibn Sumra said the Prophet ﷺ told him, "O Abdurrahman ibn Sumra, do not ask for a position of authority. For if you are granted this position as a result of your request, you will be left alone without Allah's help. But if you were granted the position without asking for it, without making a request for it, then Allah will help you." So directly, scholar come and say, "Oh, Yusuf asked." But is it really? I mean, you can think about it. Did Yusuf really ask? Or the king already gave him the position that he is going to make him the prime minister, and all of what Yusuf did, he said, no, just to make me a minister of treasury to handle the whole thing. So he never asked, actually. So I couldn't, frankly understand why scholars actually try to make the linkage between these two. The hadith is valid, and the action of Sayyidina Yusuf does not invalidate the hadith at all. In fact, it's very consistent with it. Now I'll move to, quickly here. There is something which, probably if you are an engineer, you probably will like it, or business guy, you probably will like it. There is a verse in the Quran talk about, when Sayyidina Yusuf wants to make a trick so he can hold his brother in. And I'm marking, a couple of words here in these verses. فلما جهزهم بجهازهم جعل السقاية في رحل أخيه. when he provided them with the brothers now, with their provision, he placed a siqaya. Siqaya, it's a cup that has a fluid. You can measure fluid in it, in the camel back of his brother. And then the verse continue, because of just time, I'm skipping to the other verse. Then says, we will say, oh, you guys are thieves. He said, what are you losing? And they said, we lost the cup of the king, or the king's cup. So how do you use this? What information we gain from this one? That tells us directly that the Egyptian in that time has a standard measuring cup to measure both liquid and solids and the grains. And they have a standard cup, which is the king's cup, against what they validate all of the accuracy of all of the other cups that are being used by every merchant, everybody, and so on. So that is why you can derive from this that they have a sense of a standardization system, so people cannot cheat each other, because you have a small cup and you say, oh, this has this amount, and the other one make it a little bit smaller. No, they have a standard cup that they use for it, and also tell you that they do not have a weight measure, but they have a volume measure, because they use the same thing for making grains and making liquids. The other point, which I'll leave it up to you to think about it. There is two words that comes in this surah: the word makra and the word kaid. And the word makra came 2 times in the surah, and the word kaid came 8 times. And then I put here, فَلَمَّا سَمِعَتْ بِمَكْرِهِنْ, when she heard of their makr. And then Sayyidina Yusuf, he said, قَالَ رَبِّ السِّجْنُ أَحَبُّ مَا يَدْعُونَ إِلَيْهِ وَإِلَّا تَصْرِفْ عَنِّي كَيْدَهُنْ. He said, oh Allah, remove from them their kaid. And so in that case, she said makr and he said kaid. What's the difference between the kaid and so on? And if you look in the Quran, you find the word makr came 31 times and the word kaid came 29 times. So, and these terms actually are similar in meaning. There's subtlety in difference, but they are similar. Similar to what that you make a secret plan to hurt somebody. So that's a makr, and the kaid is the same thing. You make a secret plan to hurt somebody. The question is, when you make a secret plan to hurt somebody, is it always bad? Is it always bad? How about if the police make a secret plan to entrap and catch the criminals? If this is bad, it's good. How about if the country make a plan so they can basically win a battle against the secret plan to win a battle against the other, their enemies? It's also good. So, and this is why sometimes we get confused, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala use the term makr and the kaid referring to himself, that he does it. But Allah does it against, the aggressor. And this is why I give you 2. So I'm going to leave it to you to study it. وَمَكَرُوا مَكْرًا, that they did makr. وَمَكَرُوا, they did makr. وَاللَّهُ مَكَرَ وَمَكَرَ اللَّهُ وَاللَّهُ خَيْرُ الْمَاكِرِينَ. And Allah did the makr, and Allah is the best of doing the makr. For the kaid, إِنَّهُمْ يَكِيدُونَ كَيْدًا, they do kaid. وَأَكِيدُ كَيْدًا, and Allah said, and I do kaid. So the question to you is, what is the difference between makr and what's the subtlety between the difference of them? Understanding that the makr of kaid does not mean always negative. It depends where you apply it to. Where is your secret plan is being applied to. A final point. And this is this story of Sayyidina Yusuf, which exists. It exists in the Old Testament too. But there is actually, the Old Testament story is corrupt and false, period. And that's why, frankly. And why? Because it shows that Sayyidina Yusuf is a tyrant opportunist. He took advantage of the drought to do what? To acquire, to basically confiscate all of the properties of the Egyptians, and the end make them slaves for the king. But the Quran account is completely different. The Quran, no. He was actually a kind and magnanimous man. He not only was giving the Egyptian the food, he was giving to any foreigners the food. This is why people came from Palestine to take the food. And even when they gave whatever they come to take it, to replace it, they make barter him with something. They always barter with trivial things. And in many times he gave it back to them, as he did, in the story. So it basically, the story of the Quran provide a purification of the character of Prophet Yusuf that was corrupted in the Bible. The second one, you find why it is completely wrong in the Bible, because in the story in the Bible always refer to the ruler of Egypt as Pharaoh. Pharaoh. But the Quran says he's king. And I told you, at the time of Sayyidina Yusuf, northern Egypt was occupied by the Hyksos, and the Hyksos came from the area of Palestinian Syria area, and they called their leaders as kings, and that's why he was king. So even the accuracy of the terminology is very clear in the Quran. At this time, by the way, southern Egypt was still ruled by a pharaoh. It's only northern Egypt that was occupied by the Hyksos. Another one, which is a very interesting one, it's probably not a big deal. If you read the Bible, they come and tell you, they came up on donkeys. That the brothers of Yusuf and his, Yusuf, the tribe came with donkeys, while the Quran says they came on camels. And you just think about it. If you go from Palestine to Egypt, crossing the desert, Sinai desert, can you really cross in donkeys? And how much you are going to put in the back of the donkey? They probably will eat most of the grain before they even arrive back. But the Quran obviously says it's camels. They came on camels. So one thing which I really advise, don't waste your time by reading the Bible story. It is not going to lead you to anything. But if you are going to do it as an academic exercise, it's fine. It's just an intellectual exercise. And I give you a book here is done by Malik ibn Nabi, which you call it Az-Zahira al-Qur'aniyya, and in English, the Quranic phenomena. What he did, it's a big book, and in 44 pages, he have a tabular form, and he have what the Quran says on the right and what the Bible says on the right. And you can search in the book. You can write, Az-Zahira al-Qur'aniyya or Malik ibn Nabi. If you are interested about it to see the detailed differences, you see it. It is a very easy to read because, as I said, is a tabular form in that regard. But you can do this only, frankly, if you're writing a book or you want to be as an intellectual exercise. But to get information from it, you're basically wasting, as I said, wasting your time. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك اللهم لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت فإنك يا ربنا تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك. اللهم ادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الجهل والوهم إلى نور العلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك وبطاعتك عن معصيتك وفضلك عن من سواك. اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك عليك الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين يا أكرم الأكرمين. Oh Allah, spread your mercy upon us, shower us with your blessings, increase our knowledge, grant us forgiveness, and reward us with the company of the prophets in the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, forgive our parents and all our friends and relatives who have passed away. Grant them your mercy, make their graves guard them from heaven, and grant them the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, remedy our sick. Oh Allah, remedy our son Ma'raj and our daughter Aisha Wani. Oh Allah, grant them all full and speedy recovery. Oh Allah, guide our children, protect them, and make them righteous. Oh Allah, we ask with every name you have elected for yourself, that none of us leave this gathering, but his pains have been relieved, his worries have been removed, his debts have been paid, his weakness have been concealed, his sins have been forgiven, and his needs have been fulfilled. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, adada khalqih wa rida nafsih wa zinata arshih wa midada kalimatih. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, adada khalqih wa rida nafsih wa zinata arshih wa midada kalimatih. Subhanallah wa bihamdih, adada khalqih wa rida nafsih wa zinata arshih wa midada kalimatih. Wal asr, innal insana lafi khusr, illa alladhina amanu wa amilu as-salihat, wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.